The snow was falling heavy on the lonely planet. The wind was sharp. And the ground was covered in a thick white blanket. A human explorer named David walked slowly across the frozen field. His boots sinking into the ice, he was cold, tired, and his breath came out in white clouds. He was far away from Earth, far away from home. And alone on this distant world, David was not just walking for fun. He was searching for signs of life. Many explorers had come here before and failed. But David believed he might find something hidden, something that could change everything. The silence around him was deep. Only broken by the sound of the storm, every step felt heavier. Every second felt longer, but he refused to stop. As he climbed a small hill of ice, he noticed something strange. At first, it looked like just another piece of frozen rock. But then he saw movement, weak and slow. Like someone struggling to breathe, his eyes grew wide. His heart began to beat faster. He stepped closer. And what he saw made him freeze in shock. There, lying in the snow, were two figures. They were not human, but not completely alien either. Their bodies looked like women, but their skin glowed faintly under the moonlight. Their long hair was silver, shining like glass. And their faces were beautiful, almost too perfect to be real. But their lips were blue from the cold, their bodies trembling. They were dying. Right there in the snow, David felt his chest tighten. He had a choice. He could walk away, pretend he saw nothing, and save himself. Or he could risk everything, bring them back to his shelter, and maybe never return home alive. For a long moment, he stood still, the wind screaming in his ears, but then he knelt down, touching the cold skin of the nearest girl. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faint blue, and she whispered something he could not understand. The sound was soft, broken, like music carried away by the storm. David swallowed hard. He looked at the second girl. Her eyes closed, her breathing weak. If he left them here, they would be gone before sunrise. He knew he could not do that. He wrapped his arms around the first girl. Then the second. Their bodies were cold like ice. But he pulled them close. He could feel his strength slipping away. But he forced himself to move, step by step, dragging them through the snow toward his shelter. The storm grew stronger, as if the planet itself wanted to stop him. The snow hit his face, the cold cut through his clothes. But still he moved, one heavy step after another. The weight of two bodies almost crushed him, but something inside him refused to give up. He told himself, if they are alive, I must save them. If they are alive, I cannot let them die here. Finally, after what felt like hours, David reached his small survival shelter. It was a metal structure half buried in the snow. Inside it was dark, but at least warm. He pushed the door open with his last strength and pulled the sisters inside. They fell to the ground, their bodies shaking but still breathing. David shut the door, dropped to his knees, and gasped for air. His arms hurt, his back hurt. But his mind was racing. Who were they? Where did they come from? Why did they look human, yet not human at the same time? And why, when he touched their hands, did he feel a strange energy? It was warm, glowing. Like fire hidden under their frozen skin, the storm roared outside. But inside the shelter was silence again. David lit a small heater, and the warm air filled the room. The sisters' breathing became stronger, though they were still weak. One of them slowly opened her eyes again. Her gaze met David's, and he felt something strange, like she could see into his thoughts. She whispered again, this time in broken English, "Help." Sister David froze. They were not just strangers, not just aliens. They were sisters, and they were depending on him. His heart pounded, his mind full of questions. He had only meant to explore, to survive. But now he had found something far greater, far more dangerous to alien sisters. Glowing in the snow, both on the edge of death. And he, a simple human, was the only one who could save them. What he did not know was that saving them would change his life forever. What he did not know was that these two sisters carried secrets that could shake the galaxy. And what he did not know was that one day, both would look at him not just as their savior, but as the man they wanted to spend their lives with. For now, he could only sit in the silence, watching them breathe, his heart heavy with fear, and his mind burning with questions. Outside, the storm screamed. But inside, destiny had already begun. Inside the small shelter, the storm outside roared like a beast. The wind pushed against the walls, and the sound of the snow hitting the metal echoed in the room. David sat close to the two sisters, his heart beating fast. He had saved their lives from the freezing snow, but now came the harder part. How could he keep them alive? And who were they really? He pulled out a small emergency blanket and covered them both. Their bodies were still cold, but he could feel the warmth slowly returning. One of them whispered again in a weak voice, "Water." David rushed to grab his metal bottle and held it close to her lips. She sipped slowly, her hands shaking, then pointed to her sister. David helped the other one drink too, watching as their pale faces gained a little color. The heater hummed softly, filling the shelter with a warm glow. For a while, silence returned, only the sound of breathing and the storm outside. Then the first sister opened her eyes fully, and David noticed how strange they were. Her irises glowed faint silver. Like tiny stars trapped inside, she looked at him. And though her English was broken, her words carried weight. "You? Save us." David nodded slowly. "Yes, but who are you?" She struggled to speak. But before she could answer, the second sister sat up suddenly. Her movement was sharp, almost defensive. Her glowing eyes scanning the room, she grabbed her sister's hand, whispering something in a language David could not understand. The sound was beautiful, yet sharp, like music mixed with fire. Then she looked at him with suspicion, her voice strong despite her weakness. "Why?" "Help us," David hesitated, then spoke honestly. "Because you were dying out there, and I could not just leave you in the snow." His voice was calm, but inside he was full of fear and questions. The second sister studied him carefully, as if searching for truth in his face. Finally, she relaxed slightly, lowering her head. David noticed strange glowing marks on their hands, faint patterns like symbols. When he touched the younger sister's wrist to check her pulse, the marks flared with light for a moment. A sudden warmth passed through his skin, not painful, but powerful. He pulled his hand back quickly, shocked. The sisters looked at each other, then at him. Their expressions heavy with meaning. "You feel it," the first one whispered. David nodded slowly. "Yes." "What was that?" Neither answered. But the silence was enough to tell him this was no ordinary meeting. These sisters were not just lost travelers. They were something more. Hours passed. The storm outside refusing to stop. David shared his food with them. Small dry rations meant for survival. They accepted with quiet gratitude, eating carefully as if unfamiliar with the taste. Afterward, they sat close to the heater, their silver hair glowing faintly in the orange light. David could not take his eyes off them. They looked human. But their presence filled the room with an energy he had never felt before. Finally, the first sister spoke again. Her English broken but clear enough. "We?" From ship, crash and storm, her eyes lowered, sadness heavy in her voice. The second added quickly, "Hunters. Follow us. Dangerous." Her words were like sharp knives, making David's chest tighten. "Hunters," David repeated. "Who hunts you?" The sisters exchanged a look. Silent for a long moment, then the younger one said, "They want us. We escape. We run. We hide." Her hands trembled as she spoke, her silver eyes filled with fear. David realized something terrifying. Saving them might have just put a target on his own back. If hunters were chasing them, they would come here too. He looked at the door of the shelter, imagining shadows waiting outside in the storm. But when he turned back to the sisters, he saw something else. Hope, fragile but bright, shining in their faces as they looked at him. They believed he could protect them, and maybe he was their only chance. David leaned forward, lowering his voice. "If these hunters find us, they will kill me too." "Why do they want you?" The second sister clenched her fist, her glowing mark burning brighter for a moment. "Because we are last," she whispered. "Last of our kind." The weight of those words hit David hard. Last of their kind, alone in a cold galaxy, hunted and afraid. And now, by chance or fate, they were in his care. He could not turn them away, not after what he had seen. The sisters moved closer to him, their voices soft but full of strange power. "You saved us," the younger said. "Now, we stay with you." Her sister nodded firmly, her silver eyes fixed on him. David felt trapped between fear and wonder. He had come to this planet searching for signs of life. And instead, life had found him. The storm outside began to quiet. But inside the shelter, tension only grew. 3 lives tied together by chance, or perhaps by something much bigger. David knew one thing for certain. His journey was no longer about survival alone. It was about the 2 alien sisters who now looked at him not as a stranger, but as the man who had become their rescuer, their only hope, and deep inside, he feared this rescue was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. The storm had passed, leaving silence outside. The sky was dark but clear, the frozen land glowing under 2 pale moons. Inside the shelter, the fire of the small heater burned steady. David sat against the wall, his eyes heavy with questions. The 2 alien sisters sat close together, whispering softly in their strange language. Their silver hair reflected the light. Their glowing marks flickered like living symbols. David's mind would not rest. Who were they really? Why were they here? And what danger followed them? Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "You must tell me the truth, if I saved you." "Then I deserve to know." The sisters looked at each other, their faces serious. The younger one placed her hand on her sister's arm, giving her a small nod. The older sister sighed, then turned to David. Her voice was calm but carried a heavy weight. "We are not from this world." "We are not from your world either." David leaned forward, listening closely. The older sister continued, her words slow. "Each one chosen carefully. Our ship was attacked, we fled, storm broke us, we fall from sky." Her eyes glowed brighter as she spoke. "The memories clearly painful. They hunt us. They want our power." David frowned. "What power?" The younger sister raised her hand, showing him the glowing marks on her skin. The symbols moved like liquid light, flowing across her palm. Suddenly, the heater's flame flickered wildly, almost as if pulled toward her. David gasped, his body tensing. "That's not possible," he whispered. The sisters said nothing, but their eyes told him it was real. They had a power inside them, something beyond human understanding. The younger one lowered her hand, the glow fading slowly. Her voice was soft, almost like a child's. "This is why we hunted. Our people. Almost gone. Only us now." David sat back, trying to understand. Last of their kind, carrying powers strong enough to control fire and maybe more. If hunters wanted them, it was not just for capture, it was for control. For weapons, he rubbed his face with his hands, feeling the weight of their secret pressing down on him. "Why me?" David asked suddenly. "Why did you not die in the storm? Why did I find you?" Out of all the people in the galaxy, the sisters looked at him. Their eyes deep and unreadable. The older sister spoke slowly. "Because we were meant to find you." The words hit him like thunder. Meant to find him, destiny, fate, words he never believed in. But sitting in this frozen shelter with two glowing sisters staring at him as if he was more than just a man, he felt something he could not explain. The younger one leaned closer, her silver eyes shining. "When you touched us in snow, the mark chose you." David blinked. "The mark chose me," she nodded, pointing at his hand. David looked down, and his heart skipped a beat. Faint glowing lines were etched across his skin. Soft but visible, he rubbed them hard, thinking it was a trick of the light. But the glow did not vanish. His chest tightened. "What have you done to me?" The sisters spoke together, their voices calm but strong. "Not done. Given you saved us, now bond is made. Your life tied with ours." David's mouth went dry. His thoughts spinning, bonded, tied, connected. It was too much. He had come to this world only for research, to survive a mission. Now, he was tied to two alien sisters, the last of their kind, hunted across the stars. And whatever this bond meant, there was no turning back. The shelter grew quiet again, the heater humming softly. David stared at the glowing marks on his hand. Feeling warmth spread through his veins. It was not just light, it was strength. A strange energy he had never felt before. He looked up at the sisters, his voice shaking. "What happens now?" The older sister answered first, her tone filled with certainty. "Now you protect us, and we protect you." The younger smiled faintly, her eyes soft. "You saved our lives. Now we belong to you." The words sent a shiver down David's spine. Belong to him. It was not just gratitude. It was something deeper, something dangerous. He could see it in their eyes, both sisters looking at him, not just as a savior, but as someone far more important to them. He tried to speak, but no words came. Outside, the frozen land was calm, but inside the shelter, destiny was moving like fire. The truth had been revealed. They were the last of their kind, gifted with powers beyond human reach, and now bound to him through a mark he never asked for. David closed his eyes for a moment, trying to breathe. This was no longer just survival, no longer just exploration. This was the beginning of a story that would decide not only his fate, but maybe the fate of worlds he had never even seen. The shelter was quiet, but inside, David's heart was not. He stared at the glowing lines on his hand. Faint but alive, the bond was real. The sisters had tied their fate to his, and now he could not escape it. Every time he looked at them, the weight of that truth grew heavier. The sisters sat close to the heater, their silver hair shining in the soft light. For a while, they whispered in their strange language, their voices soft and melodic. But then their whispers grew sharper, their tones rising like a storm. David could not understand the words, but he could feel the tension. Finally, the younger one turned her glowing eyes toward him, her face soft but determined. "You saved us. You saved me. I will stay with you. I will be yours." David froze. His breath caught in his chest before he could speak. The older sister's voice cut through the air, firm and sharp. "No, he belongs with me. I am firstborn. I decide." The words were broken in English, but the meaning was clear. The two sisters were no longer whispering. They were fighting. David raised his hands, his voice calm but urgent. "Wait, stop. This is not the time for this." But neither listened. Their glowing marks burned brighter, their eyes locked in defiance. The room filled with invisible energy, the air heavy with power. David felt his skin prickle, the bond inside him reacting to their emotions. He stepped back, afraid the shelter might not hold their anger. The younger sister stood, her silver hair falling around her face. She placed her hand over her heart and looked at David with pure devotion. "You chose me in snow. I felt it when you carried me." I knew her words were soft but full of fire. The older sister rose too, her posture proud and strong. "No, he carried both. He chose both, but I am the one who will lead. I will stand by him." Their voices clashed like blades. And David felt trapped in the middle. He had not chosen. He had not promised. But their eyes told a different story to them. His act of saving them meant more than survival. It meant destiny. And now that destiny was tearing them apart. David clenched his fists, his voice louder this time. "Enough. We cannot fight each other, not while danger is out there." The sisters turned to him, their marks glowing like fire. The bond inside him pulsed, painful but strong. He felt their emotions as if they were his own: love, jealousy, fear, and desperation. It was overwhelming, but he refused to fall, finally. The older sister lowered her gaze, her voice calmer but heavy. "Hunters will come. We cannot waste time. But remember, one day you must choose." The younger one's face softened too, but her eyes never left him. "I will wait for you. I will fight for you." David sank to the floor, his head in his hands. This was more than he had asked for, more than he could handle, but even as fear filled him, another sound reached his ears. A distant hum, faint but growing stronger. He lifted his head, his body tense. The sisters heard it too, their glowing marks flaring with sudden alarm. The hum became louder, vibrating through the metal walls of the shelter. It was not the wind, not the storm. It was something in the sky, searching, hunting. David rushed to the small window and peered out into the frozen night. In the distance, strange lights moved across the sky, red and sharp, cutting through the darkness. The hunters had come. The sisters stood side by side, their fear hidden behind hard eyes. They held each other's hands, their marks glowing brighter than ever. The older spoke, her voice strong. "They found us. But we will not run," the younger added quickly. "With him, we fight." David turned back to them, his heart pounding. He had not agreed to fight. He had not agreed to be part of their war. But when he looked into their eyes, glowing with fire and trust, he knew there was no escape. The bond tied them. And now their battle was his battle. He felt the warmth of the marks in his hand, power flowing through him like living fire. He clenched his fist, his voice steady. "Then we fight together." Outside, the red lights grew closer, shadows falling across the snow. The hunters had arrived, and the shelter would not protect them for long. The sisters moved to the door, ready to face what waited beyond. David stood between them, his fear burning, his courage rising. He had saved their lives, but now those lives demanded more. Not just survival, not just safety, but a choice that would shape the future. The night was silent for one last moment. Then the sky roared with the sound of ships descending. The frozen land shook, the air filled with the heat of engines. And David realized the truth. This was not just their fight, it was his too. And whatever happened next would decide whether he lived, whether they lived, or whether all three of them would die together. The ground shook under their feet. Snow slid from the roof of the shelter as the sound of engines filled the frozen night. David felt the vibration through his chest, a heavy rumble that told him the hunters had landed. The sisters stood close to him, their glowing marks burning bright, their silver eyes sharp with fear and fire. Through the small window, David saw them, dark shapes moving across the snow, tall figures wrapped in black armor. Their steps were heavy, leaving deep prints in the white ground. Their helmets glowed with red lines, and strange weapons hummed in their hands. They were not human, their movements too fast, too perfect predators, hunters, killers. David's breath came fast, his hands still glowing with the bond. He turned to the sisters, whispering harshly, "We can't fight them. Not here, not like this." But the older sister shook her head. Her voice steady. "No escape. They will chase us until we are gone." "Until you are gone too," the younger sister stepped forward, her eyes blazing with the bond we can stand. "We can fight." David's stomach twisted. He was just one man. An explorer, not a soldier. He had no armor. No weapons strong enough to face creatures like these. But when he looked at the sisters, he saw trust, belief, and something more. They were ready to give everything for him. And in return, they asked him to fight beside them. The hunters surrounded the shelter, their shadows stretching long in the moonlight. One of them raised a weapon and fired. A blast of red energy hit the wall. Shaking the small building, David stumbled, the roof groaning under the impact. The sisters grabbed his arms, pulling him back. The older sister's voice was low but firm. "It begins." Another blast struck, this time tearing a hole through the wall. Cold wind rushed in, carrying snow and sparks. David coughed, covering his face, his heart racing like thunder. The younger sister stepped forward, her hand raised. The glowing marks on her skin flared like fire. The snow outside shifted, swirling into a storm. Blocking the hunter's view, David stared in awe. Her power-bending nature itself. The hunters roared, their voices mechanical. Their shapes cutting through the storm, one of them pushed forward. Stepping into the broken wall, David's fear spiked. But the older sister moved with sudden speed. She touched the metal floor with her glowing hand. A flash of light erupted, the ground shook, and the hunter was thrown backward. Crashing into the snow, David's chest tightened. Their power was real, stronger than he had imagined. But for every hunter that fell, more stepped forward. Their weapons glowing brighter, the bond in his hand pulsed, a burning fire crawling up his arm. The sisters turned to him, their voices urgent. "Use it." "Use the bond?" David gasped. "I don't know how." The younger one pressed her glowing hand against his. Her eyes, fierce. "Don't think. Feel," she whispered. Warmth rushed through him. Fire and light filling his body. His vision blurred, his breath deepened. And suddenly he felt it, the storm outside. The earth under his feet, the energy in the air, all alive. All connected, the hunters fired again. Blasts of red energy cutting through the shelter without thinking. David raised his hand. A wall of snow rose from the ground, thick and strong, blocking the attack. He stared at it in shock, his voice shaking. I did that." The sisters smiled, their eyes glowing brighter. "Yes. Now you are one with us." But there was no time to celebrate. The hunters roared, breaking through the storm, surrounding the shelter completely. Their leader stepped forward, taller than the rest. His armor black and sharp like a blade. His voice was deep, cold, carried by a machine. "Give them to us, human, and you may live." David's blood ran cold. The sisters stood on each side of him, their bodies tense, their marks burning like fire. The younger one whispered, "Don't listen. They lie." The older one added, "If you give us, they will kill you too." David's mind raced, his fear fighting against the fire inside him. The hunters wanted the sisters, but now they wanted him too. Because of the bond, because of the power. There was no safe choice, no easy way out. He clenched his fists, the glow in his hand burning like a living flame. His voice was strong, louder than he thought it could be. "No, they are with me. If you want them, you'll have to take me too." The hunters moved as one. Weapons raised, shadows closing in. The night exploded with light and sound. Blasts of red fire cutting through the storm. David and the sisters stood together, their marks blazing like stars. the bond between them stronger than fear, stronger than death. And in that moment, as the first clash began, David knew the truth. This was no longer just about survival, no longer just about saving to strangers in the snow. This was war, and he was already in the middle of it. The frozen night exploded with light. Red beams of energy sliced through the snow. Shaking the ground, David stood between the sisters. His glowing hand raised high. The bond burned inside him like fire, filling his chest with strength he did not understand. The hunters charged, their black armor gleaming under the pale moons. Their voices echoed in mechanical roars, cold and merciless. One fired a blast straight at David. But his body moved before his mind. The snow around him rose like a shield, the beam striking harmlessly against the ice. He staggered back, shocked, but the sisters grabbed his arms. Steadying him, "Good," the younger one said. Her silver eyes bright. "You feel it now?" the older one added. "Do not fear it. Use it. Let it guide you." Another hunter rushed forward, blade glowing red. David froze for a heartbeat. But the older sister leaped past him, her glowing marks flared. And with a single strike of her hand, she sent a shockwave through the air. The hunter was thrown across the snow, landing hard against the ice. The younger sister lifted both hands, her marks burning like fire. The wind screamed, the snow rose, and a storm swirled around the hunters. Their vision blurred, their steps slowed, their aim broken. David felt the storm inside him too, the bond linking him to her power. It was like standing at the heart of a living force, a force that wanted to fight. But the hunters were many, and they did not stop. Their leader stepped forward. His armor glowing with dark energy, he raised his weapon, a long spear that pulsed with red light. With a single swing, he cut through the storm. Breaking the snow apart, David felt the shock in his chest, the bond trembling as if warning him. The sisters pulled him back, their faces tense. "He is strong," the older whispered, "stronger than the rest." The younger added quickly, "But not stronger than 3. David clenched his fists, his glowing marks pulsing like fire in his veins. Fear still lived inside him, but the bond pushed against it. Replacing it with resolve, he nodded, his voice steady. "Then we fight together." The hunters advance again, beams of red fire lighting up the night. David raised his hand, the ground itself obeying. A wall of ice rose, splitting the battlefield, forcing the hunters to scatter. The sisters moved with him, their powers flowing like rivers into his own. The younger summoned a storm of snow, blinding the hunters. The older struck the ground with her glowing hand. Sending shockwaves under their feet, David followed, pushing with his mind. The ice beneath the hunters cracking and breaking. One hunter fell into a deep fissure, his scream mechanical and hollow. Another tried to leap at David. Blade raised, but David swung his arm, and a spear of ice shot upward, piercing the air and forcing the hunter back. He gasped at his own strength, hardly believing it. The bond was not just giving him power, it was making him one with the sisters. But the leader was not slowed. He moved through the storm like a shadow, his red spear slicing the air. With one strike, he shattered the ice wall David had raised. With another, he sent a blast of energy that threw David across the snow. David hit the ground hard, his breath leaving his chest in a painful gasp. The glow in his hand flickered, the bond shaking. The sisters screamed his name, rushing to his side. The younger knelt beside him, pressing her glowing hand to his chest. Warmth surged into him, his strength returning. The older stood in front of them, her body glowing bright, her voice sharp. "You will not take him," she shouted at the leader. The leader laughed, a deep and cold sound. "He is human, weak, breakable. You cannot protect him forever." He raised his spear again. Red light blazing, David forced himself to stand, pain still in his body, but fire burning in his heart. His voice was strong, louder than the storm. I am not weak, not anymore. The bond exploded inside him. Brighter than ever, his marks glowed like fire. The sisters' marks burning in unison. Together, their power joined. Flowing through the bond like a river of light, the storm around them shifted. The ground shook. The air burned with energy. For the first time, David felt not fear, but certainty. This was what the bond was meant for. Not just survival, but battle. The hunters charged again. But this time, David moved with the sisters. Every strike was shared, every defense linked. When the younger raised snow into a wall, David turned it into ice, sharp as blades. When the older sent shockwaves into the ground, David pushed the cracks wider, swallowing hunters whole. Their powers were no longer separate. They were one, the leader roared, slashing through the chaos. His spear cut through the air, aiming for David's heart. But the sisters moved at his side. Their glowing hands crossing his path, the bond flared, and the three of them together unleashed a blast of pure light. It struck the leader full force, sending him crashing backward into the snow. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of the storm. The other hunters froze, their red eyes flickering. Unsure, David stood tall, his chest heaving, the glow in his hand blazing like fire. The sisters at his side, their eyes fixed on him with fierce pride. The leader rose slowly, his armor cracked, his spear dim, but his voice was steady, filled with cold promise. This is not the end. Human, we will return, and when we do, not even your bond will save you. With that, he signaled to his soldiers, and the hunters withdrew into the night. Their ships roared, lifting into the sky. Vanishing into the stars, David fell to his knees, exhausted. The bond still glowing but faint. The sisters knelt beside him, their hands on his shoulders, their voices soft. You fought with us, the younger whispered. You are one of us now, the older added, her tone strong, and because of that, you are marked forever. They will never stop hunting you. David closed his eyes, his breath heavy. He had survived the battle. But the war was far from over. The hunters would return, stronger than before, and now, whether he wanted it or not. His fate was tied to two alien sisters, two sisters who were more than survivors. More than warriors, they were his bond, his power, his future. Asterisk, the battlefield was quiet at last. Snow fell slowly from the sky, covering the broken ground where the hunters had stood. The air still carried the heat of battle, the memory of fire and power. David sat in the snow, his chest heavy, his body aching, his hands still glowing faintly with the bond. The sisters stood beside him, their silver hair flowing in the cold wind, their glowing marks fading back into gentle light. The hunters were gone, but their words remained. They would return, stronger, more dangerous. David knew it was true. This fight was only the beginning. The sisters knelt at his side, their eyes watching him closely. The younger touched his arm, her voice soft and filled with warmth. You fought for us. You are ours now. Her words made his chest tighten. The older sister frowned, her voice sharp but steady. No, he is mine. I am firstborn. I decide. David's heart sank, even after facing death, even after standing as one in battle. Their rivalry remained. The bond tied them all together, but it also pulled them apart. He could feel their emotions through the glowing lines on his skin. Love, jealousy, and fear. It was overwhelming, and he knew he could not ignore it forever. The younger leaned closer, her silver eyes soft. When you carried me from the snow, I felt it. You chose me first. You saved me first. That means I am yours. The older shook her head. her eyes burning like fire. No, he saved us both. He carried me too. And I'm the one strong enough to guide him, strong enough to protect him. He belongs with me. David raised his hand, his voice firm. Stop. This is not the time, but the bond made their emotions louder. Stronger, impossible to escape. He felt their hearts clashing inside him, and it tore him apart. For a long moment, silence hung in the frozen air. Then David spoke, his voice heavy. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for power or for destiny. I just wanted to survive. But now, I am part of your fight, part of your lives. He looked at each sister in turn, their glowing eyes fixed on him. I cannot choose one of you now, not when both of you need me. Not when the galaxy itself might depend on us together. The sisters exchanged a look. Their rivalry still burning, but softened by his words, the younger whispered, So, you want both. Her tone was soft. Almost hopeful, the older crossed her arms. Her face unreadable. He cannot belong to both. One day he must choose. David felt the weight of that truth pressing on him. One day, a choice would come, a choice he could not avoid. But not tonight, not after blood and fire. Not after the hunter's threat. Tonight was about survival. About preparing for what would come next. He stood slowly, his legs weak, but his will strong. He looked at the ruined snowfield. At the black marks left by the hunter's weapons. They will come again. We need to be ready, he said. The sisters nodded. Their rivalry hidden for now, replaced by a shared resolve. The older spoke first, her voice calm but firm. We must leave this place. They know where we are, if we stay. We die, the younger added quickly. But wherever we go, we stay together. Always. Her eyes met David's. Glowing with devotion, David swallowed hard, nodding. Together, he said, the word heavy with meaning. As the three of them prepared to leave the shelter. David felt the bond pulse again. It was no longer just power. No longer just survival. It was a path, a future. One he had never wanted, but now could not escape. Two alien sisters, the last of their kind, tied to him by fate. Hunters across the stars waiting to strike again, and a choice, hidden in the shadows of tomorrow. A choice that would break or unite them. The night was quiet, but the galaxy was not, somewhere out there. The hunters prepared for their return. Somewhere out there, secrets waited to be revealed. And here, in the snow, a human stood with two sisters who both wanted to claim his heart. David looked at them, one on each side, their glowing marks lighting the darkness. He whispered to himself, almost too quiet to hear. I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I will not fail you. The sisters heard him. Their hands reaching for his, three glowing marks joined together, burning against the cold night. And so the journey continued, not just a fight for survival, but a story of trust, power, love, and the choice that waited at the end.